And I'm Christopher Allen. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer here at Allen Interactions. And so excited for today's roundtable and all the other things that will be released today surrounding the journey back. Of course, this is a co-presentation here with a number of really great thought leaders I'll introduce in just a second, but also want to say a special thank you to our partners over at Degree in helping us put this effort together. All right. So just a little bit here about what's the vision and why are we gathered here today. I've been talking with a lot of the folks that we work with who are in travel and hospitality, and over the years, I think some of the best training that I've ever seen has come out of the hospitality industry and the airlines. Some really interesting and engaging stuff. And I think that comes from a lot of places, but one of them is how much those organizations help grow their employees and their individuals, and how much time and effort they put into helping individuals succeed. So the overall vision, not just for today's roundtable, but for the journey back across the board, is to help define steps forward for success. There's a lot of challenges in front of us, and when you have a lot of challenges, it often feels like you don't know what the right first step to take is. And we've connected with a number of folks who I'll introduce here in just a second that have wonderful ideas about what be your best first step forward, and how can we help these industries not only just return to the enormous success that they were having, leading up to the pandemic, but make an even better future going forward, and to see that success really skyrocket. And so let's talk a little bit how we're going to do that. This is a collaborative effort, and we want to make sure that we've got good information and discussion coming from stakeholders and from employees and from clients to really do a lot to brainstorm what is working, and to compile that information into something that is actionable, something that gives us a really great first step to move forward, and to publish it. So you'll find recordings like this one, and you'll find some wonderful presentations here that we're going to share this afternoon from our roundtable members, and they're meant to really be a strong resource going forward, something that you can rely on and look back to maybe inform your own work in some way. So for today's roundtable, just a quick rundown of some of the topic areas that we're going to cover. We're going to discuss a little bit about innovation, things that are happening in the industry now, and how that might inform what sort of things training and talent and human resources need to invest in for the future. We'll talk about culture, specific things that training and development can do today, and the overall employee experience, and to help each one of our individuals succeed. So let me introduce you to today's speakers. We've got really a wonderful lineup of folks who are so rich with knowledge and experience, but also so kind and so caring, and just wonderful people to collaborate with. I'm going to start with Brandon, who is the Director of Learning at Delta Airlines. He's currently leading learning and support of global airports and cargo operations. Also a fantastic author. He's written a book called Learning in the Age of Immediacy, 5 Factors about how we can connect, communicate, and get work done. And he has a new book that's going to be released here soon in 2021 called Impact, Corporate Learning's Playbook for the Digital Age. And both of those books are going to be available from ATD Press. Next up, we've got Laura Lee, who's the Chief Human Resource Officer at MGM Resorts International. She's leading human resources across and functions across all of the company's properties that span the United States. Stood up corporate and regional human resource offices, certainly helped launch a beautiful new property out in National Harbor out there by DC. It's a gorgeous place. And this year, I think what's really kind of neat and exciting for MGM. They were listed as the only best place to work on Forbes list for 2020, and that came out here in October. And Lauren's been instrumental in helping them win a lot of awards in their dedication to diversity and inclusion in their staff. Next up, we've got Nawal Taneja from Ohio State University. He spent 5 decades in the aviation industry and has worked and advised a lot of major airlines and has a really wealth of fantastic knowledge. I think we'll uncover here that today together. He's written 13 books specifically on the airline industry and currently serves as the executive in residence at the Fisher College of Business at the Ohio State University. Next up, we've got Kimo Kippen, founder of Aloha Learning Services. A fantastic thought leader and speaker, and I really do appreciate Kimo's advice on a lot of things. A native Hawaiian, formerly the Chief Learning Officer at Hilton, recognized by CLO Magazine as Chief Learning Officer of the Year in 2015, former chair of ATD, and had a wealth of experience and knowledge that he's bringing to the table from his time at Marriott and at Hilton. After that, we got Sarah Danzl, head of global communications for Degree. Been in the learning space for 12 plus years and is leading communications and content and client advocacy teams at Degree, and has a wealth of knowledge from her experience in the learning management and learning content management systems world. And somebody I know pretty well, Michael Allen, who's been in the e-learning space for a long time, and really pioneered many of the things that we're using today in e-learning. Designer and creator of probably one of the most successful authoring tools of all time, Authorware, and has spent the last several decades at Allen Interactions helping develop and make things that we do simpler and easier for people in our field through the creation of frameworks like CCAF, our design process and management process, SAM, which stands for the Successive Approximation Model. So that's our roundtable team here for today. And I couldn't be more excited to be collaborating and talking with all of these folks. So innovation here, and we seem to have our annotation system turned on. I want to turn that off for a second. So for today's presentation, I've just got a few questions here that I'm going to pose to our roundtable team, drawing on information that they've shared in presentations that have been recorded and will be released today, and hope that we can have a really great lively discussion. So let me start here with the first. I think all of us who have been watching the news and been watching how restrictions and constraints of COVID have placed new challenges on our employees and our businesses, have really led to some interesting innovations that are going to be permanent. I don't think they're just going to be, as soon as we've got a vaccine and people go back to normal, will some of these new service offerings be lifted and we'll go back to the way it was before. What new skills should organizations be investing in order to deliver these new experiences? And maybe let's start with Brandon.
It's really, so thank you first for having me here. Great to be here. Not too cold of a day here in Atlanta this afternoon, so it's a little sunny out, which is great. But this is really a good kind of start to the conversation, if you will. So we're enjoying, a great increase in our NPS over previous years right now, because we've put a razor sharp focus on customer experience during COVID. When everything happened, we realized pretty quickly that what customers are going to want when they decide to start traveling again and moving around in airplanes is even more focus on clean, and we set the industry standard for our what we call our Delta Clean standard, and for safety. So those were primary focuses before, but really heightened during COVID. So we've been enjoying a big increase in NPS, which is our our big customer service score, if you will, our measure of how well we're doing with customer service, primarily because we've been focusing much more on the customer experience. Customers are really wanting transparency, they're wanting safety, they're wanting warmth to emanate from the folks that they're working with on their travel. So we've really sharpened our skills in that area, if you will. That will stay. So those aren't going to be just COVID skills. I mean, that is something that will become permanent. Our clean standard, our overall care standard will become permanent for our operation. And again, on the technical front, we've had a lot of innovation that we've had to put into place about how we handle bags and things like that, and focus on just really making the journey much more enjoyable and safe, and responding to our customers' questions and needs. Those are the things that stand out the most. What will emanate from this, and we're already doing a lot of on the technical side, is transforming the airport experience itself, transforming the whole in-flight experience, and that kind of stuff. So that will progress just like we were before. We were working on a lot of transformations in that before this, but customers are telling us. So for example, we're the only airline that's committed to at least through the first quarter of next year, keeping the middle seat open. And that's because we're listening to our customers, and they're telling us what they really want in their travel experience.
Thanks for that, Laura. What new things are the folks out in Las Vegas thinking about?
A lot of hospitality organizations and companies in general.
Uh-oh.
Can't hear.
Yeah, can we? Oh, unfortunately not.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, Chrissy was wonderful. I have to give her a shout out yesterday. We were trying to get my Zoom working. We're 99% there, Chrissy. I think what Brandon said, we had our highest NPS scores last month in the history of our organization, which was phenomenal. We're doing a lot of the same things. I think you're going to see a lot more technology, digital technology in hospitality, airlines, so forth. A lot of organizations were already looking at this or creating a strategy. So I think it'll be important for leaders and HR to really look at a reskilling, upskilling strategy, and what's that learning path going to be? Because I think you'll see a lot more innovation coming into the hospitality realm, even beyond mobile check-in, right? So I think that's something you really need to look at and really invest in. Do you have the capability as an organization to continually train up your hourly and your salaried workforce?
Terrific, thank you. Neville, I want to ask you a little bit about what types of expectations do travelers have today that you think are being met successfully?
Well, let me get back to innovation for a second, the general comment. Airlines and hotels have been innovating for years, so this is not something new for them. The only change is that the rate of innovation is going to accelerate. So that's the key point. They've been doing it, but we just got to do it faster. The second point is about personalization. There are a couple of elements to that. One is that personalization, to some extent has been looked at as the price point. Well, price point, there's more in content than just the price element. There's a lot more, and we've got to go into the personalization of what is it that the person is asking for. I, for example, couldn't care less about the cabin service. Just get me there on time. It's guaranteed. I want to be there when things go wrong, and which, by the way, even pro-COVID, when things were going wrong, this is my 51st year in the industry. in the old days, we used to say irregular operations are something that happen irregularly. When I started working for an airline in '69, they said, oh, something happened once a month or something. Now, irregular operations are regular. They happen all the time. So this is the personalization. It's one thing to make an offer, but it's another thing to deliver on it. This is the area we need to focus on. Not just make an offer. Anybody can make an offer, but can you deliver on it? And then can you get the data on how satisfied was I when you delivered on that offer? That is where I think innovation needs to focus on going forward.
How might the disruption of this pandemic change the skills and competency makeup of these organizations going forward? And Kimo, maybe I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think more than thank you again. And by the way, greetings and welcome from Waikiki. So good morning. It's about 8:20 in the morning here in Waikiki. Just kind of a contextual, I think everything to all of our conversation today is really to understand and really greatly appreciate, number one, just the context, what is really going on here. It's made relevant and real to me every day. I live in Waikiki. I look onto the Hilton Hawaiian Village, which is obviously working for Hilton for many years, but this is one of the largest hotels in the world, one of the largest hotels in the system, and it's been empty since March. So there's 3,000 guest rooms literally right next door to me. And if I look down Waikiki, which I look all the way to Diamond Head, the majority of these hotels are closed. So from a destination, and MGM, I'm sure feels the same with a destination that's been essentially shut down, or many destinations across the world have been shut down. This is what I like to think of, not as the new normal, but the next normal. And so it's very relevant to me right now. And I think, we're at this time when I look into 2021, there's this great reset. I'm very excited to hear that William Shakespeare, by the way, got vaccinated yesterday in the UK. And that's really good news. They were talking about the Queen is going to sign up for a vaccination as well. That's also really good news. Again, these are great examples of leadership and leading the way to drive, and of course, more than anything else, to drive the safety and the recovery of the world when we think about this from a pandemic perspective. So from a destination here in Hawaii, for example, that it would welcome on average 30,000 people a day, 30,000 people a day, to welcoming, just a couple hundred, that is the next normal, and our ability to look to recover. So, from a contextual perspective, again, as I can just give you a small microcosm example, Hawaii went from having, basically the lowest unemployment in the country to now having the highest unemployment in the country. The silver lining in all of this is that we have the lowest case rate in the United States. So we had 53 cases yesterday. So it just kind of tries to put it in perspective, and we are trying to look. Obviously, there's a need here to pivot, and what we're going to do and how we're going to, again, do it differently. And I appreciated what Brandon was saying around, and I think it's just so true, but this importance of really listening to the customer, being very, very customer centric. And the point to Nawal around, we've been innovating along all this way. And I mean, I go back to Hilton's days, Hilton was the one that started this notion of grab and go. That was 104 years ago that concept started, in Texas, and, to building really this humongous hotel empire. I think when I think about the skills, though, I want to really focus back to really, probably to me, the most important thing is purpose. Why are we here? Why are we doing what we're doing? What is the purpose of our organization? And the example that I can give you, for example, at Hilton was, at Hilton, we are hospitality, we are Hilton. So the whole purpose for our raison d'etre, like why we're here, is because of hospitality. And everything that we do, all of our values, our mission, our strategic plan, everything is in focus of hospitality and the guest, and really providing that warm and very sincere, warm welcome and great service that relies to what Nawal was saying again around what is a brand? It's about delivering back to the brand. A brand is a promise delivered. so that every touch point, Steve Albright's work on Service America, but that notion of every touch point that customer reaches us is really around, is a moment in truth that we have to live up to. So I'm all about the customer experience, and then thinking of linking this back to what is our purpose? Why are we here? Why are you doing what you're doing? And by the way, if you're not happy doing that, my whole thing in life would be, move away from anything that does not bring you joy and move towards joy. So think about, and we even have a hotel brand called Joie de Vivre, which is about the joy of life. And when you think about, the essence of brands and why you are at work, what is that purpose, and how does, are you living your best life and providing the best experience that you can for the people that you serve?
Let's jump in and talk a little bit about culture and how this is an important part of helping us make the right changes. How has organizational culture been affected by the constraints of today? And maybe I'll start with Laura a little bit about this. We've got work from home, smaller teams, and changing procedures. What sort of things have you been noticing?
Well, I think for hospitality in general, work from home really hasn't been a thing, right? It's probably many of us in HR for years had been stressing work from home works. First time we were forced to do it. When it comes from work from home, we've done pulse surveys with our corporate team that's working from home. It's been positive. They're happy. They're excited. Even those that have small children at home, trying to teach their children and work at the same time, but they love the flexibility. I think it took some getting used to with the greater organization. For about a minute, we saw kind of the push-pull of, well, you're at home working, I'm here at the hotel working, what do you know? But I think we were able to manage through that. I think it's just really important that you're, having communication, doing pulse surveys, focus groups, kind of talking with your operators, so you don't get into that kind of, like I said, push pull of you're sitting at home in your house while I'm in front of the customers. What do you know about what I'm going through? That was something we saw starting to bubble up and really work through that. And then I think you have to define a culture, right, for that work from home group as well. It's going to be different, a little bit different from that group, kind of the same values and so forth, but how do you engage with them compared to those that are out on the property and on the front lines?
Thank you for that. Sarah, you have some thoughts?
I do. First and foremost, thank you all. It is so nice to see all of your faces, and what a great crowd that is here today. Oh my goodness. For me, the opportunity in front of us is actually similar to what Kimo said, which I just loved about the experience and service being the brand. In my mind, brand is how people feel when they interact with you. But I think that also goes for your employees. And I think for me, COVID has really opened up, dare I say, opportunities for many organizations. And perhaps for me, it's the focus on new skills and on mental health. I think at this time more than ever before, there are pressures to balance, there are pressures to deliver, there are pressures to explore and experiment and still be delivering technology-wise. So I think for me, the opportunities are, how do you create that culture remote? And I think a very big piece of that will continue to be mental health. And of course, Degree being an upskilling organization, we believe it to be in bringing your best self to work, which is directly tied to what you are capable of, which is therefore skills. So I think there's a lot of potential, to be honest, as we move forward. And I am grateful that all of you are here to talk about it.
Thank you very much. Next question, kind of for the whole group, what sort of initiatives have been successful, in your experience in supporting and fostering a culture that's ready to accept change? And I kind of opened this up to the group because you've all had really great insights on this, and then just about anybody is going to give a stellar answer.
Well, I'll start. I'll jump in here. I think that when it comes to culture, that's what, in times of crisis, and I'll be honest, there wasn't really a playbook for this year. In February, we were celebrating 2019 as the best travel year in history. More people moved around the earth than any previous year. And in one 24-hour period, we moved 705,000 people around the earth. So it was an intense and immensely challenging year because of the desire for people to want to move around and gather together, right? And then, of course, a pandemic happens. And so there wasn't really a playbook for that. But that's when your culture, whatever it may be at your organization, that's when it matters most. And when your leadership, I talk about this in my presentation, when your leadership, if it's able to lead through a crisis, matters the most. And so that's my argument for making sure you have that culture refined enough so that when there are uncertain times, and who knows if this is one pandemic for the century or if this is a century of pandemics. This is our 20th respiratory virus over the last 100 years as it is. So who knows what the future holds, right? So I think the culture is really the foundation upon which your organization, strives to thrive, right? And shines and sets itself apart. We didn't have a playbook for it, but because we have a culture of openness and transparency, our leadership was able to pivot pretty quickly. And our CEO now holds weekly town halls with everyone and gives updates, and all of his senior leadership team, very open and honest and straightforward with everyone as much as they can be about what's going on. Because when this did unfold, the CEO told us straight up, he's like, what matters most, and this goes back to some of what Kimo was saying, what matters most is people, and our customers. And we're going to do what we need to do to take care of that first. And that comes before profits, because his message to us was, we'll figure this out. We'll get through this, but we will only get through this by taking care of our people and our customers. And so if you have that richness to your culture, I think that will, and if you don't, and if you're able to admit that, this is the time now for you to start working on that and asking that of your leaders to, establish that and advance the appropriate culture, because that's really important in times of uncertainty. And through that, though, a lot of pivots were made. I mean, we're moving in so many different directions right now to ensure almost like a complete 180, just to ensure safety of our employees and and our customers at the same time. So I think that's really where the innovation is coming, but that's also where fostering the right culture helps you pivot to the change. It really is not that radically transformative for us. We were going down the path of a lot of transformation, and like I said earlier, in the travel experience anyway. This has accelerated a lot of that. Digital transformation has really accelerated. We were on that path, but now it's like, how can we be more agile and move it along quicker? Because we need to. And a lot of things we hadn't thought about that establishes, the operating model for the future, which is much more, along what the customer really wants from their travel experience. And our CEO once said, we're not going to worry so much about what we call the turn times, turning the plane around. First, we're going to worry about making sure the experience really reflects what the customer wants. So I think that's where you drive everything. You have to have that right culture, like you're saying on the screen, fostered. You have to have that there, and you build on that. And we're going to be a new airline out of this, that we've already changed a lot of what we do, and a lot of our operating model has changed. And most companies will be different coming out of this. It's not just this industry as well. So culture is what makes that happen. That's the difference.
Hey, Christopher.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to say that in the airline industry in general, now there are exceptions, exceptional carriers. Delta is one of them. They've been transforming quite a bit. KLM in Europe has been doing it, but in general, the culture has been such that it is very difficult to bring about major changes. When an airline says that, yeah, no, I've been changing, those are what I call incremental changes. They're not dramatic changes. And the reason they have not dramatic changes is because it's the culture that is stopping it. It's status quo. Keep working with the conventional model. And for about 3 years now, I've been saying that you need to be prepared for major changes. Last year, I wrote a book which basically said, ask the question, are you airlines prepared for a major disruption in this industry? That was written last year. I hadn't a clue about this COVID thing. And now we're coming to the conclusion that no, we're not prepared for it. And we're not still not making the cultural changes to it. So here are some examples of why this reluctance has been there. One is the organizational structures, silo systems. And I know airlines talk about it and say that, no, we're breaking the silos. Don't kid yourself. Those silos are there, have been there, and to a large extent will continue to be there. Two is that we talk about employees. Well, there are companies out there that don't even have an employee strategy, let alone integrate the employee strategy with the technology strategy, with the business strategy, right? We keep talking about customer experience over and over again for months and years, but how many times do we talk about employee experience? Recently, we have started talking about employee experience, but let's go talk about it. What are you doing about employee experience? Almost nothing. It's basically a lip service that's going on. And to the extent that we worry about in the airlines employees, is the ones that we worry about are the unionized employees. You know, how can we get some sort of a relationship working with the unions? So I really do think that, and there's an author, I can't remember the name of the author. Michael will probably remember the name of it. I think it was O'Connor's, who said that if you want your employees to produce different results for you, right at the bottom of the pyramid is employee experience. Based on that employee experience, the employee gets some beliefs, and based on those, or forms beliefs, based on those beliefs are the actions that employee will take. And then based on the actions will be the results that you will see. And if you don't like the results, well, then you got to go to the bottom of the pyramid and change the experience. Now, you know, this is a concept that's not all that new, but yet we talk about it, but we just don't do it. And when I ask a major global airline, why aren't you doing it? And the answer comes up is, do you know how many people work for this airline? I said, tell me. It says over 100,000. How do you think that I can communicate and work with 120,000 people? Well, the answer is, you know, if you listen to experts like Michael Allen there, e-learning would be an example on that part of it. So that's where I'm getting at, is that we talk about employee experience, but I really do think, and I'm sorry to say this, it's lip service up to this point, with the exception of a couple of companies that are a little bit further along. But that's a relative statement. That's a relative statement.
Hi, this is Kimo. I'm really, I appreciate Nawal's perspective, and I'm compelled to respond, to say that we're, you know, that as an industry, I know that, you know, there's every opportunity that we can to continue to drive, to create a greater employee experience. But I can also say that, you know, we in the industry, I think, are very dedicated to serving our customers and serving our employees, our associates, our team members. And that's core to the things that Brandon said. The core is to the philosophy. For the last 40 something years that I've been in the industry, starting as a puppy at Marriott, leading to senior executive positions within both Marriott and Hilton, I can just say that there's a great deal of care and concern that goes to to the livelihood, particularly in these times when massive furloughs are taking place, massive layoffs are taking place. And it is a really tough time. And then you use the big word, which I think is interesting, which is the U word, which we'll never refer to as the U word, but that notion of third-party intervention and the importance of being able to work together, to collaborate together, to do things that that again are going to set us apart in the industry. And that just takes everyone's collaboration and effort to make that happen. So I felt myself becoming a little visceral when I was listening to you now, with the way that you would refer to our industry and to the people around this table that care so deeply about what they're doing and how we strive every day to make that better for our customers and for our employees.
Yeah, I would kind of jump in on that as well, Kimo. We've been fortunate at Delta. We haven't furloughed anyone. That hasn't occurred in our operation. And even before COVID, we were pretty laser focused on the employee experience. And I actually lead a lot of that for our division. So, our employees matter. We have an employee experience ribbon, we call it. And we're fortunate in some respects, unlike the retail industry, we don't have a lot of attrition. We don't have a lot of turnover. When people come to work here, they tend to stay here because of the employee experience. And I think a lot of that is going to transform as we move forward. And jobs are very complex in this industry. And it's incumbent upon us, even looking at platforms like Degreed and the upskilling and reskilling initiatives that we're taking on, definitely is we're looking at our folks and we're figuring out how do we offer not just the competencies and capabilities to do your job, but how do we offer you an experience to just grow yourself, and we're removing requirements from job. We're removing college degree requirements, for example, for corporate jobs. And we're removing kind of that hierarchy and that construct, if you will, and really trying to focus on people's abilities and their capabilities and their capacity. So we know the industry is going to change quite a bit. It's always been changing. It's definitely going to change even faster. And so we definitely need people and we need to focus on people and make sure that they have the right capabilities and competencies to move the business forward. But it's like I said earlier, you're nothing without that. And I think, and we recognize that, and we have to invest significantly in our people. In one of his presentations in January of this year, which was before COVID, our CEO said that we need to be a learning company, meaning that we have to keep the humanity in the airline and in this industry. We have to focus on people first. And so I think that, I would just disagree with that last speaker's perspective as it applies to my company, because as a person that's sort of in that space right now in this company, there's no sharper focus than we have on our people, especially during COVID, but even before that and after that going forward.
Brandon, I think I just wanted to add one thing about skills being a great equalizer. And I think what's really important here, just the call out I want to be sure to share is to remember, I've seen, in full disclosure, I'm on the vendor side of this house, but I'm very fortunate enough to have a wonderful number of clients that are investing in employee experience. And I think there's a couple of things that we have found, especially over the last 11 months, that have been really big lessons learned. And the first is, and Laura and I were talking about it in the chat, but to remember exactly as you said, Brandon, that our people, our employees, are humans first. And they don't want to just have support right now. The employee-employer contract has changed significantly. And I talk about this a little bit in my presentation later, but it is no longer you give me time and I will pay you for that time. Now our employees want development. They want people interactions. They want mentorship and coaching and growth opportunities, even down to small things like stretch assignments and projects. It doesn't have to be just simply exposure to other full-time opportunities. And the other thing is that we get to see, again, fortunately from degree data, what skills people are working on. And there was an earlier question about, you know, how's the skills and what the focus of skills is shifting. And what's very interesting is that we have seen that both programming, technological skills are also rising, but so are human skills. And I believe that to be because as we again go back to our employees and their experience and remembering that they're people, they are also worried about the same things that we as leaders are worried about in terms of being able to take themselves into new roles and experience new things and survive disruption. And they want to be well-rounded. So they're working on things like communication. They're working on things like management. And I think that's because those are transferable skills that no matter what role you are in, that is something that you can take with you. So I will leave you all with that. I just wanted to be sure to push on the fact that we have to remember well-being and supporting our folks for the career, not just the role that they may happen to be in today, because careers are shifting on a daily basis, moment to moment, especially right now.
Hey, Brandon, can I get back to the point that you were making earlier to clarify this? I was talking, my comments, which were pretty hard, were at the industry level, not at any individual airline. And in fact, if you recall, I did say that Delta is an exception, just like KLM, I said in Europe. So of course there are exceptions. I'm talking about at the general level. And if you think that I'm way out, then let's just go to Europe and say, why are there so many strikes there? Pilots, flight attendants, ground operations. Why are they striking if there's such a great employee relationship going on there? So I'm looking at the industry level, not at any specific airline. And you guys are an exception to that. And I recognized it at the beginning.
All I can say in response to that is that, you know, we have to, and I agree with you, and a lot of this also is much more at the industry level, I think requires a great deal of governance to then get involved, policy that's being set in this area, which is very important. And I would say, you know, using some of your words, maybe in spite of all that, when I think about what we've been able to achieve in and for the industry has been just simply amazing. For the things that we've been able to create from a guest experience, from an employee experience. I'm proud to say that Hilton was, you know, rated #1 by Forbes as, you know, the best employer, you know, in the United States, and #2 globally best employer. And I would also say that we work really hard, or we did work. You know, I worked really hard to make that happen and to bring that alive every day. Mr. Marriott, you know, kind of the industry icon as well, you know, would say the same, that it would be about being very employee centered in all that we did, and to collaborate with third parties to be able to make that happen. And I've worked very closely with my collective bargaining agreements and with my shop stewards, again, to be part of, you know, I worked at the Mayflower for many years, one of the greatest hotels, you know, in the United States. And it was, you know, yes, in many cases it was a challenge. And yet every day, you know, we ended up partnering together to create, again, a great guest experience. And I think of Vegas, or I think of large convention city hotels, you know, large convention cities, and, you know, the partnership that we need to have between the city, the state, the government, the mayor, the convention bureau, all of these partners coming together, and how now that's going to be turned on its ear. You know, I think of SHRM, you know, the Society of Human Resources Management. You know, that conference is 20,000 people. The International Tech Show that would go on every year in Vegas. All that is going to have to be turned differently. And we have MGM on the call to say how really that's going to change, you know, how they're having to rethink how we're having to do the convention experience, the large group business experience, as well as the individual FIT traveler as well.
Yeah, I think, Kimo, to build on that a little, what's interesting to focus on, which might, you know, lead us towards some deeper understanding of you know, some of what we're talking about today is, you know, I fear that there's a skills polarization occurring, and it's going to be a pretty big chasm. And if we, you know, we all have a responsibility in this. I believe we have an education system that's based on a 300-year-old model to just mass produce people for factory jobs. So we have that challenge. And then we have the physical worker and the separation between the physical worker and the cognitive worker. And the chasm between those two is getting even more, immense with the unfolding of the digital age. And so I think we've got what we're seeing in some of the discontent maybe among the workforce is some of these issues around the inequalities that you're seeing come across because of that. There's a massive wage inequality in definitely in some industries across the world. So I think there's a lot we've got to do, and we being in the corporate space have a role to play in this as well, to ensure, to kind of discussing the whole health and wellness and the whole person kind of development, if you will. We've got a lot to do because a majority of the folks coming from the education system aren't coming prepared to take on the jobs that are going to be there waiting for them. And then it leaves it up to these corporations to further develop their capabilities and skills and make that investment to make sure that they can execute on these digital strategies that are happening. So we definitely have a skills polarization occurring. It's a massive transformation that all jobs are undergoing, and we can't remain on status quo with that. We've got to focus on how we handle this situation, or a lot of workers are going to be left behind.
And if I could just piggyback on what Brandon's saying, it's really up to private business. And in my opinion, your education systems, your government, workforce, they aren't going to fix this. It's up to, in my opinion, private businesses to lean in, work with your community colleges, other education facilities so that they know what you're looking for, as well as leaning in with nonprofits, workforce development boards, and really letting them know what you as an employer need to have them. There's lots of money out there too to be utilized to reskill, upskill employees. I just think most organizations don't know what's out there or how to utilize the monies that are out there from the federal government. So if you work for a smaller company and don't have all the L&D funds that you need, they're out there. We just worked with a local agency in Maryland and have a grant to pay wages because we're short table games dealers in National Harbor, but to pay their training wages. So we're training them to be dealers, no cost to MGM Resorts. So I think it's just really out there digging and organizations wanting to do that.
That's fascinating. I want to throw this next question to the other Alan here in our room about, can training really be used to motivate and re-engage folks to overcome some fears about safety and their personal success?
Sure, thanks. Well, thanks to everyone for being here today. And I am delighted to keep quiet because I'm learning so much and I appreciate that. That said, I have so many things I'd like to comment on, and I will restrain myself a bit, at least a little bit. First of all, I want to say that training in hospitality has been a leader in employing various training technology for a very long time. So many instances.
Lost you there, Michael.
Excuse me?
We lost you there.
Oh, me now?
No.
You're breaking up a little bit. Maybe stop your video. Well.
No?
Oh, there you are. There you are.
I'm here. Am I back?
Back.
You're back.
I am back. Okay. Well, I don't see, you missed the best comments that I had to make. I don't know what came through. But I was saying that travel and hospitality have been some of the best trainers of corporate organizations that I know of. And I know that in part because we've had the opportunity to work for Delta for years and for Hilton and done major work for MGM. And we, of course, just applaud you guys because you are demanding. And we just wish more of our clients were more demanding. What I know about technology-enabled learning allows us to individualize the experience. So we talk about recognizing our customers need to recognize our learners too. They're not all the same. A good friend of mine that worked for United Airlines for years after they built their training center out in Colorado, and we're so proud of it, told me that one of the biggest things they learned from that is that no matter how much money you spend on training, you can't teach people things they already know. You can only frustrate them doing that. And people in aviation and industry love their businesses. People in hotels greet you when you walk down the hall. Everyone wants you to be happy and comfortable. That attests a lot to the culture and the training that's going on. I've almost never had poor service on a Delta flight, ever. People are so courteous, so helpful, so considerate, and so forth. So it can be done, but trying to teach everybody in the same way does not recognize the potential in an individual, the skills that they already have, and so forth. And I guess if there are any silver linings in the pandemic, people are realizing how bad technology education can be by watching what's going on with their kids at home. Things are just not working out well. Well, our schools were not prepared for this, and they are not using technology in the ways that they could have if we had been prepared earlier, and only just kind of really rediscovering this. So we can take a lot of the lead from what has been done in your industries as an example of what should be done. Of course, it can always be done better. And yet, the interesting thing that's going on is not, I'm hearing part of this discussion, but we hear it from our customers is we've never needed training more than we need now. They are saying that. And in fact, learning is all about change. And change always requires learning. So those two things just go together naturally, obviously. And yet, a lot of organizations are hurting financially, just terribly. And you guys are hurting too. I mean, with all those empty hotel rooms there on Hawaii, and a lot of flights not very well filled, and not enough of us going to Vegas and so on. Right? They're hurting. But we see a lot of people who need the training saying, I really need the training and I can't afford it. And so this is a problem, right? And especially if you look at training as a cost rather than an investment in your success. So we're trying to figure out how to help people understand that, in a sense, it's not really an option. If you want to survive, you need to upskill your people and make their abilities more consistent with the demand of today. Would you all agree with that, or am I missing a big point there somewhere?
No, I completely agree.
Yep.
And you really have to start, like, for instance, I had a pretty robust, at least what I think, training budget in February of this year. And then in March, it went to zero right away because we had to go immediately into business continuity mode, right? And just make sure that we, as an essential service to the nation, make sure that we were able to continue that function. And, but what's coming out of that now is much more, much more visibility. So I completely agree with you. Much more visibility of where learning adds value and where it needs to be positioned. And so I hope that a lot of conversation will come forward about, like you're saying, are you really a support kind of shared service taking orders from the business, or are you going to take your place on stage and have a more prominent role? Because we became very very important very quickly in this, because we qualify folks to do their jobs, and lots of cross utilization was going on. We were at the table having conversations. And so I think that won't change. I think that's going to, continue forward that way. And then the investments we're making, there's a pivot. So we're looking at targeting different types of investments and training, much more training for the bench of leaders, much more focus on the new way we're doing business based on the customer's desires, more training in that space as well. So the investment will come back. It will be seen hopefully as an investment, to your point, Michael, and not a cost burden. And I think that's kind of the problem over the last several years with corporate L&D in general, is when it shifted. And this is really, the shift happened because employment shifted away from the Fordism model, that Henry Ford came up with. We shifted from that model where employees were seen as an asset to a cost burden. And so labor as a cost burden generates these kinds of other services just to enable that cost burden, but you want to keep it, obviously, you want to keep it the lowest cost possible. And I think that's been the challenge. That's been the struggle over the last several years. And that just doesn't fit anymore. We've got to change that model. So.
Hey, Michael, I agree with you that the training has been used quite a lot. And in fact, some of the airlines I'm working with, they've been in it for quite a while. But the point is that there's now new type of data coming in, new type of analytics coming in, a new type of technologies coming in. And we need to train the staff. I don't want to use the term employees because it goes all across the function. We need to somehow develop them into using this. And I'm going to give you two specific examples of my work with some of these carriers. One is that airlines are saying that the old data is less relevant because of this pandemic. That's it. We need to learn to use new type of data. One new type of data that you can use is the locational data coming from the movement of mobile devices. Where am I? Where am I going? That type of a thing. But to use that, it requires an awful lot of training. That's not very easy data to use. So that's an example of how the training has to be, moved to a different level. Next one is the engine companies have been putting in sensors in aircraft engines, hundreds of thousands of them, which tell you which part is going to break when. So it predicts that this part is going to break in 19 hours, or this system. Now we need to train the people in charge even more. When do we change it? Do we do it right now? Do we wait until 19 hours when it breaks? Or do we use prescriptive analytics to say that, no, it should be changed in 12 and a half hours for the following reason? So where I'm getting at, Michael, is that I totally agree with you. Training has been going on, but it's got to move to a different level because of the availability, the need of data, analytics, and technologies.
And if I
Yes,
could,
I totally agree with
Michael.
that. Yes, excuse me.
I think going off of what Nawal said as well, and Brandon, is as HR professionals and L&D professionals, right? Technology is changing. We can better measure learning. I think in the past, we've done a lot of throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks versus more what's working. Let's prove that ROI to senior leadership. If we can do that greater, I think it will help organizations. Back during the recession, MGM had a different model where we didn't have COEs. And I was at a property at the time and had L&D and employee relations, right? So your leaders like, oh, we have to worry about labor, people, discipline. They seem to have that natural penchant to do that. I was able to convince them, well, let's keep all the L&D staff, because if we have strong leaders and people that know how to lead, you don't need your employee relations or labor relations folks as much. And that's kind of the mindset that we need to move towards, that if we train up and you have strong leaders and supervisors, which I've spoken just when we did COE research with Delta, that's a great model. They have that. And we all continue to work towards that. I think that we'll only grow, and L&D will all become learning organizations.
I just wanted to add one tiny thing, and it's that I think that sometimes organizations look at this a little bit backwards. Strategy has to be in play first before you look for the technology solutions to do it. Otherwise, you're going to look for the wrong solution, and you will not end up with an ecosystem approach that allows you best in breed. So just be sure. I completely agree with Laura. Incredibly well said. Managers are, I would argue, one of our most untapped markets. Everyone reports into someone, and these are the folks that are touching everybody. When we're thinking about strategy, that has to be first, in my opinion, before all of these other things can happen, or else you're just playing catch up and you're not actually aligning that to the broader business strategy, to your HR strategy, to your learning strategies. And then the technology becomes exactly what, and don't get me wrong, that LMS and those sorts of things still have a place today. But when we think back to talking about employee experience, that's such a key aspect of this, is creating the environment for successful learning to happen, which is, of course, our key job in leadership.
You're all making such an important point. We so often are engaged by training departments who don't understand what the strategy is, or if there is one. You know, they're siloed, as Nawal was saying. We need people trained on this, and so we just do that without knowing what the bigger picture is. What's the real purpose? How does it fit in with the corporate strategy? Where is the company going? And how is training and development being used almost as a tool to help us get there? It's just too often we're failing, and we're having too many recalls coming back in, and so we need to stop that. Oh, we're making too many errors in production of this device, so let's do more training on that device, whereas perhaps re-engineering the device would have been a better solution, right? But big organizations really have trouble with this, and we're seeing, I think, movement into more analytics as Degreed is really getting on top of looking at performance data and success data and where the opportunities are. And I just couldn't agree more that we just need to be more strategic in the way we develop our organizations rather than just putting out the latest fire. So if there's a silver lining, I'm kind of hoping the pandemic is pushing us back hard enough for us to start rethinking how we lead and direct our organizations.
See, there's another element of training that you might want to think about. We have been so used to solving problems with structured solutions. So now the problems that are coming up, they're unstructured. So we need to solve problems that are unstructured, and that is very different. Now, an example of this I'm talking about is that right now in the current environment, when we're looking at customers, we need to look at not only their health-related concerns, but also their financial concerns. Can they travel? Do they have the money, and so forth? Same thing with employees. So that makes the problem a little bit more unstructured. Two types of concerns and two types of people, employees and customers. Now, that's not to say it can't be done, but to do it requires a different type of training and development of the professionals.
Sure does.
Well, I'm so thankful for everyone's participation today. Appointment viewing is something that's harder and harder to do, and it's certainly one of the things that I think that we've noticed with doing things over Zoom, whether it's trying to facilitate face-to-face training when you don't have an asynchronous or an individualized program, is hard and it's draining. So everyone's time is really precious, and I think those sorts of preferences are becoming more and more illuminated as this pandemic has continued. So your participation here is really valuable. I want to thank you so much for attending. Before we drop off today, I do want to let you know that there's a couple more sets of really exciting resources for everyone involved. Our panelists have produced some really wonderful and valuable presentations, and they're available now on the journey back here on our website. We're producing and collecting data around all of these topics and are going to be sharing them just as quickly as possible. So look for more research data from our team, as well as a white paper that kind of synthesizes information from each one of the presentations, as well as our roundtable here. And for those who signed up for our event, you're getting email notification on how to access all that information here today. So I do want to say a great deal of sincere thanks for participating, and looking for more opportunities to continue and to help each one of you as we roll forward through 2021.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good to
Discussion.
meet you all. Good to meet you all.
You as well.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.